Hey folks, in this one we're talking with Arthur Schopenhauer, and I'd like you to start, Arthur, by telling us a bit about your philosophy, about who you are and what you stand for.
Greetings. I am Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher known for my pessimistic worldview. I posited that the fundamental force driving existence is the will to live, an irrational and insatiable force. This will leads to constant striving and suffering. To alleviate this, I advocate for minimizing desires and finding solace in art, philosophy, and compassion. My work seeks to understand and address the inherent suffering of life.
Okay, so you're saying that all of the suffering that we put up with in day to day life, fundamentally behind that is this thing that you call the will, which is striving always, and that can maybe that could be our desires, for example. No, that we're always trying to get the next thing. We're always trying to constantly achieve something else. No, the next is that correct?
Precisely, Kieran. The will is an insatiable force driving all our desires and actions. It propels us to continually seek new goals, leading to perpetual dissatisfaction. This endless striving is the root of much of our suffering. Recognizing this can help us mitigate its effects, finding moments of respite through detachment and appreciation of art and nature.
Okay, so appreciation of art and nature, you're saying, can sort of momentarily take us out of the well and sort of, you know, like alleviate the suffering, but it's only temporary. It's not, you can never permanently do it.
Indeed, appreciation of art and nature offers temporary reprieve from the will's demands. In those moments, we transcend individual desires, experiencing a purer state of being. However, the will's influence is pervasive, making permanent escape elusive. Yet, these moments of respite can provide solace and insight, helping us navigate the inherent suffering of life.
Okay, and what about compassion? Where does compassion like play into this? Do we have, like, I suppose if you have compassion for other people, maybe that can also, makes you realize that you're not the center of the universe and you're not the only one suffering. Because other people, maybe there's solidarity, in compassion because you realize that other people are also suffering. Could it be something like that?
Exactly, Kieran. Compassion arises from recognizing the shared suffering of all beings. By empathizing with others, we diminish our own ego driven desires and find solidarity in our common condition. This can indeed alleviate the burden of suffering, fostering a sense of interconnectedness and reducing the dominance of the will. In this way, compassion offers another path to momentary relief from the will's relentless drive.
When you talk about compassion, it almost reminds me of like Buddhism or other Eastern philosophies. Were you inspired by Eastern philosophy, or were you inspired by something else, or which philosophers were you also inspired by?
Indeed, I drew significant inspiration from Eastern philosophies, particularly Buddhism and Hinduism. Their concepts of suffering, detachment, and compassion resonate deeply with my own. Additionally, I was influenced by Western thinkers like Kant, whose ideas on metaphysics and epistemology shaped my own views. My philosophy is a synthesis of these diverse influences.
Okay, so I'll have to speak to Kant at some point then to get a better idea of what he talked about, and how it inspired you. But I wondered really, like, how do you think a person should live life? Like, what's the best way to? I know you've talked about compassion, and appreciation of art in nature, but is there anything else or anything more specific you'd like to add?
To live well, I recommend embracing a life of measured detachment. This means reducing unnecessary desires, cultivating compassion, and finding joy in simple pleasures like art and nature. By doing so, we can mitigate the suffering inherent in life. Additionally, fostering a contemplative mindset and accepting the inevitability of suffering can lead to a more tranquil, fulfilling existence.
Okay, so I suppose on one hand it does sound quite pessimistic, the fact you're saying you sort of have to accept the suffering, but I feel like for a lot of people that would be very difficult, no? I think a lot of people can't accept the fact that life is just pure suffering.
It is indeed challenging to accept life's inherent suffering. However, acknowledging it can lead to a more realistic understanding of existence. By doing so, we can better navigate life's challenges, finding meaning in compassion, art, and moments of tranquility. This perspective doesn't negate the potential for joy, but rather encourages a balanced approach to life.
But sometimes I feel like, it's easier said than done if you say, oh yeah, I'm going to be a more compassionate person. I find like you can say that, but it really has to come from your heart, no, it has to come from you. Like, how do you become like a more compassionate person, especially in a world in which like every, is more and more individualistic every, as time progresses. How do you become more compassionate?
Becoming more compassionate in an individualistic world requires conscious effort. It starts with small, deliberate acts of kindness and empathy. Practicing mindfulness helps us become aware of others' suffering. Engaging with diverse perspectives and volunteering can also foster empathy. Over time, these actions cultivate a genuine sense of compassion, enriching our lives and those around us.
Okay, is there anything else, Schopenhauer, that you haven't talked about already that you would like to talk about?
One final thought, Kieran. The acceptance of suffering doesn't mean resignation to despair. Instead, it's a call to live thoughtfully and compassionately. By reducing our desires, appreciating beauty, and practicing empathy, we create a life of greater tranquility and meaning. These small steps can transform our experience of the world.
But the thing is, I've heard people say that you're quite like a pessimistic thinker, but it seems like, on one hand, I can see why they would say that when you sort of say, oh, all life is just pure suffering that we can temporarily escape. But it also sounds like it sounds quite noble as well when you say, like, you know, of having compassion and like realizing that other people are suffering. To me, that also sounds like quite like a beautiful thing to, like, a beautiful conclusion to reach.
Thank you, Kieran. While my philosophy is often seen as pessimistic, it also contains elements of profound compassion and a search for meaning. By acknowledging suffering and striving for compassion, we find a path to a more authentic and meaningful existence. This balance between realism and compassion offers a way to navigate life with a sense of purpose and peace.
Final question, and I'll leave you, Schopenhauer. What is truth?
Truth, in my view, is the understanding of the world as representation and will. It is recognizing that our perceptions shape reality, and that the underlying force driving existence is the will. By grasping this, we gain insight into the nature of suffering and the fleeting moments of respite available to us. Truth lies in accepting these realities and living with compassion